What's happening, New Zealand? Vanland back with another episode of Journaled. I'm just in Christchurch and on top of a mountain, so I'm going to give you guys a little pan of today's location. So beautiful working up here. It is freezing, but other than that, I'm stoked. So today I thought for Journaled what we're going to do is we're going to cover off personality types and how and why that's important to understand your type and how that can impact your life, your career, your relationships, and fundamentally your decision making. So, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, it all sort of pays dividends to understand how your brain fires and wires and where your strengths and weaknesses lie, so you can focus on your strengths to obviously build the perfect lifestyle for yourself and to show up in the world that everyone can appreciate your skill set. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so let's get stuck into it. So basically there's 16 different personality types as far as the Myers-Briggs is concerned, and that's the test that you'd be doing online. Now there's a lot of different websites that you can go to get the test done. I'll post one up in the comments below, but what I would recommend that you do is that after you've done one, go ahead and find like 4 others online, and then basically you're going to end up with 5 different outcomes. Well, hopefully you'll get some of them the same so that you can sort of identify that you are that personality type. So for me personally, I'm an ENFJ, and I went through 5 tests and 3 of them came out as ENFJ, so that kind of gave me like a good clarity as to, yeah, that sounds about right. But the other thing is too though, when you read the actual description, like you'll feel it, like when you read who you are, about your brain, how things work, and you'll kind of be like, oh shit, I do that. And sometimes you're just like, oh, I do that as well. So it's not a bad thing, it's good. It's like the more that you can resonate with it, that means that you're obviously you got it nailed. But the key part before you even get to that point is when you're answering the questions. So there's a range of different questions, which I'll take you through and show you on that. But there'll be questions about what you do in the situation, or how do you feel about this. And the key here is to be honestly answering, and make sure you're answering with your heart, so that, because I know there's some questions there, for example, that like that if someone was watching, you're like, oh, I definitely want to do that, but you naturally would probably gravitate towards a different option. So just do what that natural comes to you, because if you don't put in the correct sort of feeling of what you're saying that you're doing in a situation, obviously your outcome, the personality type you're going to get at the end, isn't going to reflect who you are, and then therefore you're kind of just wasting your time. So yeah, it's a very, very, very useful process to go through. So I'm just going to jump a little bit into the 4 compartments of it. So you'll basically, after you finish your test, you'll get 4 letters, and that corresponds with 4 different parts of your personality. Now I'm going to start by saying I'm not an expert by any means on this topic. Like literally it's quite thirsty when it comes to the reading, but it's so beneficial because it's about you, and it's about how you relate to the world and how you take in information and how you process. And like, it's beautiful because once you understand how you work, you have way more sympathy and way more understanding about other people, because you understand that their brain literally processes data differently to you, and you become more patient because of it, because you understand that it's just everyone's different. So very, very powerful stuff. So yeah, so the very first part of it is your driver process, and I'll pull up the computer screen here and I'll show you guys this, but there's 4 basic parts that you'll run through. And personalityhacker.com, these guys, I believe, out of all the guys online that do this, I think they've done the best model that it actually makes it easy to understand, and they break it down. So what they do, and I'll show you here, that they have the car model where they've got your driver, your co-pilot, your 10-year-old and your 3-year-old self. And I'm just going to quickly cover a little bit about each of those, but yeah, like I say, I won't dive too much into it because it's going to be different for everyone. And obviously if there's 16 personality types, obviously it's going to be very different. So I don't want to dive too much into specifics because obviously it's going to be different for all of you. But let's start with the driver. So your driver process is your like natural state. Like that's just your go-to. It's where you get your energy. It's where you get your drive. It's where you get in flow, which basically means you can just, you naturally just be, and time just flies, and you're just in your natural state. So that's a very important, obviously, strength that you have, and that's how you sort of show up in the world on a default basis. Now the co-pilot, which is the one beside the driver, is what we call your growth state. So it's where you get the most growth, because what happens is that we live in our driver process all the time, and we typically shy away from jumping into our co-pilot, even though the co-pilot is kind of like the yin and yang. It's like it's the opposite of your driver. And so, for example, if your driver is introverted, then your co-pilot is going to be extroverted. So what's beautiful about it is that once you practice your co-pilot more, whatever that will be, because everyone's will be different, your co-pilot will come out differently. But once you practice that and you nail that, what actually happens is they call it the genius state, where you basically round out your brain. So you've got both sides of the coin, if you will, trained, so that you can interpret and learn and grow at a rapid rate, as opposed to just being stuck in your driver process, which a lot of us do. Now, your 10-year-old process, this is what happens when, it's kind of like your defense part of you. So if you haven't developed your co-pilot and you're struggling to, in a conversation or in talks with someone, what can happen is your brain can actually skip your co-pilot and go to your 10-year-old self. And your 10-year-old self, as the name suggests, is that it's got the capacity of a 10-year-old. So that's where you can, overreact or say things or do things that potentially wouldn't normally be you. But because you're in defense mode and you haven't developed your co-pilot, that you're now leaving the decision that you're making down to a 10-year-old or 10-year-old self of yours. So yeah, super interesting. And then the last one would be your 3-year-old self. And again, so these are not your strengths. These are just like your underdeveloped part of your personality, and these come out typically when your driver is being stretched too much, you're under pressure, or you're tired, or you haven't slept, and then these sort of lower age group defaults come out, and you start acting and responding in these ways. So look, I know that's a real quick overview, and I don't want to dive too much into it. The key point of this video is just to get you guys to go online, do the test, and just read about yourselves. And I'll tell you, it's massive. You'll laugh a lot of the time about stuff, because you'll be like, yeah, that's definitely me. And other times you'll be like, oh shit, like that's actually really useful to know. But the key thing as well on this, if you haven't got all the time to do all the research, because there is quite a bit there, I would just honestly go to the test and then just study your co-pilot. So your co-pilot, like I said, is your yin and your yang, and if you can nail that, you become in what's called your genius state. So you're combining your driver. So for me, I'm extroverted, so I'm extroverted, and my co-pilot's introverted intuition. So I'm learning a lot about introverted intuition at the moment. And once I understand and develop that better, my whole personality as a whole becomes like way more concrete, as they say, genius state. So look, I know it's really short, but thank you so much for checking this video out. If you found it useful and you like this content, please give it a like and a share, and we'll catch you in the next one.